If everybody will take their seats, we'll get started for this portion of the program. Before we begin this portion of the program, I have a special presentation I would like to make. You may have heard in my interview earlier this afternoon, when we first started the festival, it was very easy to moderate, to interview, to do all these things with one person in that responsibility. But as the years have gone by, that has become far more complex to do. And so I'm so grateful for those who I can trust with a microphone, who if I'm not able to get back to the sanctuary, they can handle that smoothly and they do it professionally, and I'm so grateful about that. Is Richard LaMotte in here? Now, I say he takes orders really well, and I told him to sit down, and he took off. Donnie, can you get Richard LaMotte? I'll talk about him while he's not here, because he does that about me all the time. I'm so grateful that whatever the situation is, I can count on him to come and to rally the cause. And oftentimes I don't even have to say anything. If I'm not in the room, he knows I need somebody to start the next panel. I'm talking about you, Richard. No pressure. So Richard first came to the festival through Sally Raines. She contacted me and said, I have an individual I want you to meet who's worked on Air Force One, and I think he'd really be a good addition to the Cherry Fester community. And they had met, I think Richard had flown into St. Louis to see Greg Geese from Gone with the Wind. And so that year Richard came as a speaker, and he spoke about his experience upon Air Force One, but little did he know from that first moment of joining us here at the festival, he'd end up with almost a permanent position. And I'm so grateful for that. And so today, I really am honored to be able to present him with the Cherry Blossom Medal because, as I said, I appreciate that he goes above and beyond always to help me. And if you would join me in congratulating with him on this honor. That's an inside joke between us. So yeah, congratulations, Richard. Well deserved. It's become a tradition at this particular portion of the ceremony to either begin with the national anthem or some form of patriotism. And Mr. Jamison Minor has had that honor for several years, but today we're going to do it a little bit differently, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would stand, Mr. Jamison, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. 20 years ago, when we gathered the presidential descendants in Marshfield, as I mentioned earlier, I really thought this would be a one-time gathering. And little did I know that it would become something permanent on the festival schedule. This is the only program that has been consistent all 20 years as one of the concluding events of Saturday's schedule. And we've had, I think, 3 moderators in the history of those 20 years. Roy Howard Beck was the first moderator, and so we've asked him to come back today to have the honor again. I think he did it at 10 years and maybe another year. Several times. I had the honor to do it a couple times, and Dr. Larry Cook has been in the seat as moderator for several of those years. It's an honor today to have Roy Howard back in Marshfield. He lives in Washington, D.C., but he will always have a heart for Marshfield and be a Marshfieldian. So if you join me in welcoming our moderator, Roy Howard Beck.
Yeah, thanks. That first year was something else, and I think who was here the first year? See, look at this. This is really something, and I think everybody will have a story. Has a story about, how weird that was to get the invitation, and I wasn't. I mean, I really just came because my dad had been talking about it for the previous year, and I did it for my mom and dad, and they believed in Nicholas, and so there we go. Listen, this is for 20 years. being here in Marshfield has been, at this point, been a chance to have some insight into one of the world's, I'm not saying it's the world's, but one of the world's most exclusive clubs. I mean, you think about it. The families of 49 U.S. presidents. That's a pretty small group of people. What a club. And a lot of them have been, a lot of those presidents have been represented here. You've heard a lot. If you've been here all along, I know most of you have not, you've heard a lot. Now tonight, or this afternoon, we thought we would, for those of you who have been here the last few years, we don't want to repeat things that we've been saying recently. Because, you know, even though their presidents, the presidencies have finished, the lives of the families continue. Another year goes by, new experiences, new knowledge. And so we're going to focus on more things that are new. Before we start, though, we will have kind of a quick rundown of who's here. And I've aged a lot in the last 20 years, and that's just it's a rare thing, but it's happened to me. So to keep clear, I've arranged them in the order. Do you see the order? Because you've been here before. So we're going to start with, and now here's what I'm asking you to do, is give your name and where you live, your president, and what was the other? Oh, and your relationship to the president, okay? We're going to start at the newest, yes.
My name's Marie Clinton Bruno. I live in North Little Rock, Arkansas. My husband has a family restaurant some of you have been to, Bruno's Little Italy, in Little Rock. And I am President Clinton's first cousin once removed. His actual descendants, which is one, Chelsea, is a little busy with her 3 children, she and Mark. And I'm honored to be asked sometimes by the president and the foundation to stand in for him at certain events. And I got that call after, just out of the blue, what are you doing? And, they can't make it. You need to come hear about this. And I was too curious not to come, and I've been coming ever since. And it's great to be back in Marshfield. Thank you for having me.
I'm Devon Nixon. So Uncle Dick is President Nixon is my dad's brother, a great uncle. And what were the other things we were supposed to mention? Where I live is I'm 5th generation Orange County in Southern California, but I'm currently living up in the Bay Area after 12 years in China. When COVID hit, I got the tap and was told to come back stateside, a little safer. So back here. Anything else? Was that it? Yeah. Good. Awesome. It's a pleasure to be back as always, guys. And my father sends his love to everyone.
Great.
My name is Kathleen Ralls. My mother was Lorraine Nixon Anfinson, who attended these. I'm the great niece of Richard and Pat Nixon. I'm from Northern Virginia. Well, Virginia, we call it Northern Virginia. And I've just recently started coming after my mom passed in 2020. So I'm really excited to be here and see everybody, and I've made some wonderful friends. So thank you, Nick, for including me.
Great to have you.
I'm Jennifer Harville, and I'm from Westmoreland, New Hampshire. I am great-granddaughter of the 30th President, Calvin Coolidge, and his wife, Grace Coolidge.
I'm Tweed Roosevelt. I am a great-grandson of Theodore Roosevelt. I live on the island of Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. And what else? Oh, did I cover it?
I think you did. My name is Massee McKinley. I'm from Atlanta, and I'm the great-great-nephew of William McKinley, the 25th U.S. President.
I'm Margaret Clark, and I'm the great-granddaughter of Rutherford B. Hayes. And they've told me that I'm the only descendant that went into politics. So I've been on the Rosemead, California, it's 10 miles east of Los Angeles, for 34 years. We don't have term limits, so I tell people, you don't like me, vote me out. But so I've enjoyed that. So, and I'm a public servant, not a politician.
Test one. My name is Richard Gatchel Jr. And I say the name, add Junior on there, because my father was Richard Gatchel. And he came to the very first festival as well, and then came to some subsequent ones. And he died last year after a wonderful life, but I did not want to confuse the two, but I'm thankful to have that name, and I need to put the Junior on there. I'm the 5th great-grandson of James Monroe, our 5th president. And I'm not, earlier today I said I was the 5th great-grandson, and someone didn't really understand that. So great-grandson. Number 5 and number 4 is coming up.
My name's Mike O'Mara. I'm from Tampa, Florida. My relation with James Madison is none. Didn't know the guy. However, I understand through family history, he was my 5th great uncle. Interestingly enough, my mom was born Helen Bogus. She couldn't care less about the heritage, but my grandmother was born Helen Dolly Madison, and so she cared a lot about it, and her father collected some of the memorabilia, so we had 4 or 5 different pieces of James Madison from either the White House or things that belonged to him that got passed down to the family, and I kind of got aware of that in 2016 and got more into the history. That's how I happened to reach out to Massee, and how I got more involved in presidential families and those kind of things.
And Madison didn't have children, so we have to deal with the nephews and nieces. Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Shannon LaNier. I live in New York City. I am the 6th great-grandson of President Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. It's great to be back again. You all know I came the first year when I was 5 years old, so it's great to be back again.
And just for some of us that weren't here every time, many of you are here. Let's think. We've had representatives at the Cherry Blossom Festival of George W. Bush, of H.W. of course. We've had, and Ford. We've had Ford, Carter for sure. What's that? And Truman. Lots of Truman. FDR was we had somebody, I know the second one, I was there second. No Hoover, right? What's that? Van Buren. Tyler. Polk. Oh, Johnson, yeah, and Eisenhower here. Who else? Kennedy, yeah, that's, so we've, oh, Buchanan, one of them, okay. Oh, Grant, okay. So most of them, I guess we need to get the list of the ones that are left, and it's up to you all to find them, because I think this is one of those things where, Richard, I think you kind of put the what do I want to say, the hand on the shoulder of Massee at the White House, didn't you? Yeah. And said, at the White House, it's like, okay, you've made it to the White House, but have you made it to Marshfield? That kind of, right? And it sounds like you, Massee, you've become a great evangelist already. You're working. We've now got Madison, so now it's your job to, move another one along. That's good. So I'm interested, and I told them ahead of time. We don't have time for everybody to answer every question. So if you don't have to jump forward if you don't feel like you got a good answer. No, I don't want to put this pressure on you, but. Last year or very recently, tell us something about if your family, if the president's family has gotten together in some way. Have you had some kind of gathering in the last year or two that you would, if maybe it's a big gathering or maybe it's a smaller one?
Well, I'll start because Monticello, if you've been there, doing a lot of reconstructive work to try to bring it back to what it most likely would have been like when Jefferson was alive. So they've erected some slave cabins. They revealed Sally Hemings' room. We just had put up a reflective memorial for those who were enslaved there, where people can really think and meditate over the lives and all the information they just heard from the tour, can now go over there and think and pray. And then they also have made renovations to the slave cemetery there at Monticello, so we've gone back several times and had small family gatherings for those unveilings of those events recently.
So when you say we, are we talking about a half dozen people or?
For those, at about 25 to 50 of us have
nice.
gotten together from both sides of the family, and all those, because it's kind of mixed up. It's not only Martha's and Sally's side, but also all those who lived or worked at Monticello, their descendants.
Yeah, we've been there recently. It's very nice. Yes.
Yes, Rutherford B. Hayes, well, he didn't do it, but his was the first presidential library. So we had the 140th, I believe, anniversary of Descendants, and so they got green T-shirts for everybody, and we had, probably 200 people there.
So they're at the
Yes.
at the library.
Yeah, in Spiegel Grove, Fremont, Ohio. And then we had another one last year for Rutherford's 100th birthday.
What kind of a gathering? How many in the family would be at a gathering?
Of my
like that?
family, or?
Yeah, of his family, of his descendants.
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah,
about
but how?
200 about 200 before.
That many were all
Yeah,
all descendants.
Yeah, a little fewer at
That's
the.
not everybody
but,
has that.
But
has that
virtually
many
all of
descendants
my
in the
family went, and I have a big family, so.
The further back your president goes, the more relatives you have. And so it's rather astonishing, actually, because the Washington descendants, he didn't have any direct descendants, but the people who are members of that group, what is it, how many?
13,000.
13,000. There is a book called Burke's Peerage, which does the British stuff, but it did one on presidents. And it's this thick. It's this thick. And it's just basically names. There are, I am sure, people in this room who are descendants of presidents who don't know it. And a lot of people don't know it. So go look and come join us at some point. People, I get because I have the name, and because Roosevelt is unusual name and we're all related, I get asked questions all the time. And I get the impression that people think that somehow presidential descendants are different than all the rest of you. I can assure you we're not. We worry about the same things, and our family meetings worry about the same things. So our family, want to answer the question, every year I have two rich cousins who throw first a Easter get-together at a yacht club on Long Island, which is where the Roosevelts are from, in my branch. And we just had one. I had to miss it, unfortunately, but there were, I think, 62 of us there. It's not anything formal. It's just done. And then I have another cousin who does, in one of the clubs in New York, a Christmas get-together where we have somewhat less, but probably around 40. We haven't had a real open sort of family reunion of both sides for about 10 years, but we're looking forward to another one.
We find that interesting, and my guess is, and we had some little discussion with Richard a couple of days ago. It reminds me that even though there may be lots of descendants, it does make a difference if you still have the name. And secondly, it makes a difference the people who actually have made the effort to study the president, be really particularly interested in it, and interested in the institutions that are around it. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I'd point out that having the name is relatively rare, because once a branch loses the name, it's gone forever.
That's it, yeah.
So in my situation, the ones with actually the name is about, I'd say 15%, something like that.
Yeah.
At ours, yes. The 20th anniversary of the Cherry Blossom Festival is not the only 20th anniversary in the last year. Last November was the 20th anniversary of the Clinton Center and Clinton Library opening in Little Rock. And Karen's going to show you a picture of our little gathering. We were able, it was my father's 90th birthday, who's in the light blue shirt in the middle, third from left, and then the president and Mrs. Clinton are next to him, and she's behind him. And the rest of us, and the Rodham family, there's not many of them, and there are not many of us. So this is 3 generations. Some of you that were here in the first festival, the young, handsome, bearded man kneeling on the left is my son, Jack, and living in California. But anyway, Tweed's right. I have the name, and Jack is named John Clinton Bruno. So we're trying to keep the name, and I have 2 nephews that are got the Clinton name, so we're able to keep carrying that down. So this is 3 generations. The president's stepfather, many of you know his father was killed in a car accident before he was born. my grandfather, and then some of these are grandchildren and great-grandchildren of my Uncle Raymond. They were all brothers, and so you've got the rest of us down. So it was great to see them. It was a zoo getting it organized. And anyway, just no matter if you're presidential relative or not, get to know your cousins. Please do. They're wonderful people. I've known all these all my life. So.
Thank you. So this kind of leads into a next question. That is, whether you have a family gathering or not, something new that's happened in the last year or two that you haven't talked about here that has happened in facilities, institutions that are related to your president, whether it's a library or a historic house or whatever. Any changes? Yeah, Richard, you've got one.
Yeah, it's I like this story. It's so James Monroe was our 5th president. He had 2 daughters. I come down from the one who was born second. The first one was Eliza, and she had a life that's fascinating. Where she ended up in 1840 at age 43 as a widow in Paris, and she died at age 43 with no one around to help her or to bury her. The State Department paid to bury her at La Pierre Lachaise, I think. I've got it written down. There's 100,000 people buried there outside of Paris. She's one of 100,000. And the Secretary of State paid money to have her buried there in perpetuity. Well, in perpetuity at this place only means about 100, 150 years until they want more.
We've got a few people in the audience that are almost perpetuity.
Yeah, and then they want more money. So they started trying to soak the family for more money. And the Monroes said, but here's the document signed in 1840 for perpetuity. And they got the State Department involved. The woman down at Ash Lawn Highland is writing a book about her. And they were able to identify where she was in the cemetery of 100,000 people. And she was recently reinterred in Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond next to her father and mother. And she was reinterred on March 18th, a month ago. So you want to talk about a reunion? That's a reunion.
Yeah.
So there.
That's the daughter of Monroe.
That's Monroe's daughter.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. Other things have happened, new institutions. You've had some stuff. You've had some things happening, haven't you? At the. Oh no, that's right.
We have.
Yeah.
Karen, thank you for. It's another graphic with the 20th anniversary. There's some statistics here about how much impact, and I know President Clinton's library is newer, the first electronic library, if you will, but the impact of a library is very far-reaching in their communities. And as you can see here, the economic impact, if you've been to Little Rock in 30 years ago, it was nothing where this library is now. Now there's a marina, there are apartments, there are shops, there are office buildings all over, and it pretty much spreads throughout the rest of the state, actually. And if you visit a presidential library, how many of you all have visited a presidential library? You have the passports. Okay, so the passports cover the libraries beginning with, quickly, I know, I better hurry up here. President Hoover, and all the way through President George W. Bush, and Mr. Obama, Mr. Trump's, and Mr. Biden's libraries are in the making. These are run by the National Archives. But you can get a passport for $10. When you go, you'll get it stamped, and it's a little small to see the Clinton Library. Of course, they stamped mine when I bought it. I've been there before. And I hope one day it would be cool to get all of the rest of all of you here who you have a place for your ancestor, but not necessarily a presidential library. I think it would be cool to get all of them listed. Now, you all would be the ones to pick out what place would you want people to do, kind of what Andrew was doing with the first slide. Just because they're not with the National Archives doesn't mean they're not libraries of importance and have made great contributions to the community. But you all would not believe the people that travel to all the libraries, and they come in with these passports. So think about it.
Tweed, looks like you've got something.
So I'll add a little to that. We've founded something called the Roosevelt School at Long Island University for the study of the presidency, and that will involve all the presidents. And one of the things we're doing there is digitalizing papers from presidents who don't have libraries and from private collections of papers, which is an extremely useful thing. It sounds easy. You just take a picture of it and you've digitalized it, but it needs to be cataloged so that it can be found. And that is not an easy process. So that's one thing. Second, there's an independent group which the family is supporting, in North Dakota, where TR spent a good deal of time, building what they're calling a presidential museum and library. It's outside of the system, and the system, which is the National Archives, has it. But these are beginning to be developed, and they'll focus on the issues that relate to the president. So the things are happening all the time, and the collection, to be able to digitalize, will so extraordinarily change research on anything, not just presidents, but on anything. When you think about it, when somebody like David McCullough, who wrote books about various presidents, wanted to study a president, he had to travel around and shuffle through libraries and personal collections all over the place. Very expensive, very time-consuming. It took him 10 years to write his book, usually, to write each of his books. Now, everything will, or eventually, everything will be online. And historians, for the most part, don't have to see the original document. They're interested in what's in it. And so we're going to see shortly an explosion of books about all kinds of things, particularly political things. And it's well worth supporting, so I encourage you.
It's available to the public, everything that you digitally.
Yes, oh yeah, everything's online.
Yeah.
So now, for example, the Library of Congress, I happen to know more about TR, put TR's papers in the Library of Congress online, 1 million items. So you can see why it has to be cataloged. Yeah. 1 million items, but this will now be available to somebody in Bangladesh who'd like to write a history about TR or whatever. It's going to really change how basic research in these kind of history issues change in the United States, and therefore what we will discover and find.
And so all of these, especially 19th century presidents, so much more will be available because they don't have their own big libraries. Are you saying there's a facility in Medora, or they're preparing?
Yes, they're building a presidential library.
Okay. In Medora.
And
I hope they get some more motels.
Let's just say, for you all that don't know, we're talking about North Dakota. North Dakota is the least visited state in the country. And in the winter, even the North Dakotans don't stay in North Dakota. So if you go up there, there's nobody there unless you don't have enough money to go anywhere. And so they're building this library with an idea of bringing tourists there. They spent $350 million on this.
Wow.
Really something.
So how many have been to Medora, North Dakota?
Or North Dakota.
I mean,
well,
right, because, I mean, it's a national park.
I won't say why. Yeah, why?
No, it's a wonderful national park, isn't it? It's I think
one of the towns in North Dakota is called Minot.
Yep.
And their statement is, why not Minot?
Yes.
And everybody else says, what?
What Shirley and I said when we visited was it's Medorable there at that. Yeah. And it's really nice. Other things have happened, whether historic houses, anything that's related, historic sites, anything new going on? Yeah, we got one here.
All right, hi. So we have things going on. We have things going on at the Notch every summer because, as many of you know, July 4th is the birthday of President Calvin Coolidge. And so this year, as with past years, we're going to host high school debates. And the topic is going to be about 100 kids will be up there debating tariffs, specifically the tariff from the Coolidge era. And, and the 1920 Jones Act. And we use lay judges. So any of you can come to the Notch and be a judge for these kids. And you don't have to be, truly knowledgeable about the topic, but you're just sort of deciding, okay, who put forth the better argument? So that's kind of what's going on. And then we have, in early August, we have the Coolidge swearing in, as we do every year. Now, the 100th anniversary was 2023. And that was really interesting because he was sworn in by his father at 2:48 a.m. So, so when we had that anniversary, yes, we were out in the middle of the night doing the reenactment of the swearing in of the 30th president.
And if you're not there at that time, you can't come to the Coolidge family reunions. Well, I don't know about that. That ought to be yes.
I just
From
wanna
the
say-
Hayes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. The Hayes Museum in Fremont, Ohio has lots of activities. I get all these in the mail, and I wish I didn't live so far away. But for example, Lucy, Rutherford's wife, First Lady, moved the Easter egg roll from the Capitol to the White House. So they have celebrated that every Easter. So that was just on the news even.
Yeah, that's a good, thanks for reminding
The
me.
kids love that. So if you want to go on the website, just find out what's going on if you want to go there. Because
So how many of you descendants have been able to be at the Easter roll? Shannon has. You have. You have. Okay, that's great. Surely once a year they. This is more really for residents of the area. Once a year, in the early spring before the tourist season, before Easter, they open up the White House grounds. You get tickets, stand in line, but then you can just wander around for several hours on the south lawn. It's really big, and seeing all the trees. Did you all talk about the tree planting already a couple of years ago? Have you talked about that before? Yeah, let's say a word about that.
Yeah, so in 2018, there was a 200-year anniversary of the White House being inhabited after it was burned and then it was rebuilt. It took a while to be rebuilt. And a tree had fallen down, and they wanted to replant a tree. And so they said, we need some people to help us replant this tree. And so they got Mary Jean Eisenhower, because Eisenhower tree, I think it was something close to that, an oak or something like that Eisenhower loved. And they said, well, who was the first inhabitant 200 years ago? It was James Monroe after it had burned down. He lived on I Street for a couple of years. Then he moved in. And they said, let's get a Monroe descendant in here. So they called the Monroe Museum, and then Scott Harris goes, oh, you got to call this guy Richard Gatchel in Baltimore. So the phone rings on a Thursday, and they say, hey, do you want to come down and do this tree planting? I go, sure, sounds great. When is it? Monday. I go, okay, I'll move some things around. And then I hang up, and of course I went down on Monday, but I hang up and I Google Richard Gatchel Monroe White House tree, and the press release had come out 10 minutes before the phone call, saying that I would do it. So I'm glad I said yes. And I went down, and then Mary Jean and I went down, and we met in the diplomatic receiving room with Melania Trump, and had a wonderful visit with her, and then walked out kind of to the far distance of the South Lawn and spent a lot of quality time together, and it was just great to be there. And in the East, 2 days later in the East Wing, I met Massee, and there were some others there in this little holding area, and I said, you've got to come down to Marshfield sometime. So it all happened there.
Weren't you there too? Were you there? Yeah, you were there too.
Yeah, Jenny. Yeah, and I want to. I'm sorry to overtalk. Jenny Harville, what she's done and what the Coolidge Foundation has done. Yeah, the foundation has done. I was a guest at that dinner, and I was so proud to be there for the 100th of Coolidge. But these kids there, these young men and women that were either interns or up for the scholarship, seeing the pictures and the activities going on at the Notch and what they do in the summertime, I was so moved by it. And it's a fantastic, it's really something to aspire, where I need the Monroe foundations to get to that level. But it was great to see and hear that. But you and the foundation have done a great job.
So, this has been going on for 20 years. It's very interesting for those in the audience who have lived a while, and that's a good share of us, the way that the media regard a presidency, the way the historians regard it, it shifts. Not just up and down, but just different ideas about, because of the times, you have a different feeling about them. And so I'm kind of wondering, to think about, if you can think back as far as 20 years ago, how you feel like your president has maybe shifted in the eyes of historians. Just something and it may be really new, or it may be along the way. I know there's been some major changes in your family. I'm going to start with Shannon, because I felt like Marshfield was kind of aggressive in pushing this issue a little bit. Through you, say a little word there. I'm talking about bringing the families, the way that the families have started to merge. When you came here, you were not, families were not merged at all, right? You're not? There we go.
Okay, check. All right, so we had already been hanging out and getting together, but we didn't know everyone and each other's families. So I had an opportunity once at Marshfield. You know, I think Nick invited Chris Truscott down. I knew his uncle Lucian Truscott, but I'd never met Chris. So he brought us together, and then we, stayed in touch ever since. And the family has grown and connected more. You know, a lot of times people want to try to split us apart because it's a more sexy story, but we hang out. We, as a family, the Jefferson side, well, technically both Jefferson sides, the Martha side and the Sally side, hang out. We get together. We go to each other's family funerals and weddings and bar mitzvahs, whatever it is. We hang out, and I travel a lot for work. So if I'm in a state where I have family, we go out and we have dinner. So I think we have really grown to be a family, and through the good, the bad, the ugly, that we have exemplified love regardless of what and how it started. We're family now.
Other things of changes in any new books, any new historians have taken a new view of your president?
There's a new Coolidge film, Rediscovering an American President. It's a full documentary, and it's being prepared for sale to a major platform. And it was produced by the foundation several years ago, and tens of thousands of views have been on public television.
A lot of things are really done around an anniversary, and
exactly. Yeah. And there have been so many miscommunication about Coolidge, so we're trying to set the record straight.
Well, sometimes we find that some report gets out early on, like the first report gets out, and they didn't have Snopes to check it out, back in 1840 or 1923, and it gets re-reported. As a journalist, we had the morgue. If you know the newspaper business, the morgue Tweed is so different from what you're talking about. It's just clippings. You have librarians who clip every piece of paper. They put them in little envelopes, and all these different categories. And I'm telling you, before you get sent out as a reporter, when you get sent out for a story with something, they say go to the morgue. You go to the morgue first. You check what's been written. Well, if there's an error in the earlier story and the correction's not in there or it was never corrected, it just gets repeated over and over, and then that's the basis of the historians writing there. So they're really fine historians who have repeated things that just simply weren't true, and that's why there's always room for more research.
And I'll just mention one more thing. We're going to be celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and Coolidge marked the 150th anniversary when he was president. He gave a speech, and I believe it was in Philadelphia. It was titled "The Inspiration of the Declaration," and I'll just give you a really small quote. Whoops, or not. Hold on. If all men are created equal, that is final. If they are endowed with inalienable rights, that is final. If governments derive their just power from the consent of the governed, that is final. No advance, no progress can be made beyond these propositions.
Yeah,
and that was about the Declaration.
I just wanted to, real quick, I think it's working, right? During COVID, there was blaming China, things like that. So unfortunately, there was a lot of Asian hate crimes. And my city is 51% Asian, and 3 of my council members are Asian. And so I told them, Rutherford B. Hayes vetoed the first Chinese Exclusion Act, because I want them to know that was.
So that's an example of looking back to your being sort of experts, or at least amateur experts of your president, pull out these things. Well, that's very interesting, isn't it? So yes, word from
Several
Teddy.
points. One is that what people write in biographies, it's interesting to look at biographies of presidents. And there was a guy named Edmund Morris who wrote a 3-volume biography of Theodore Roosevelt, and he claimed that this answered every question and that this was sort of the great biography. The fact of the matter is we're interested in different things at different times. So somebody writing a biography 30 years ago would focus on some aspects and some now on others. So if you take TR, there was a time in his life, and he's really gone up in sort of the public estimation. I can't tell you how often people say, well, he's always there. How often I've said, boy, we wish Teddy Roosevelt had come back. During certain periods of his sort of life, people would focus on the differences and the people, the divisions. But like most presidents, TR was focused more on trying to put people together. We've heard a little about that earlier today, for example. And the fact of the matter is, we're much more alike than we're different. I was struck by that when we were listening to we were reciting the pledge. Indivisible, indivisible. Everybody should be reminded of that. No matter what's happening out there in the world and what the press is doing and what everybody else, we've got to remember we're more alike than we're different. We have more interests, and we need to remember that and come back together. That would have been a message, I think, of all of the presidents who are up here.
One of the things that's been really a pleasure on this last couple days here was a reminder. So I was the keynote speaker 20 years ago, which is crazy to say. It's been amazing years since then. But one of the last things I said in that speech, which is the last thing that President Nixon said to Kissinger when he was literally leaving the White House for the last time, walking to Air Force, or Marine One, excuse me. And he turned to Kissinger and he said, it will be 50 years before history views me favorably. And what's really trippy is we're about that point. I've had so many of you in the crowd, up here, everywhere, coming up going, wow, Nixon really got a bad rap, especially in light of everything going on in today's world and what's been going on between the parties, things going after Trump, what have you, but just things are not much more public now on how systems work. And just the foresight of him to be able to call that, it'll be 50 years, that's going on now, the realization, but it's really interesting to see and always appreciative to have people come up and speak their mind, and it's interesting.
Well, it's a reminder that there are so many different aspects to a presidency. And if I'm not mistaken, your speech at the first Cherry Blossom Festival was the first public one that you had done about your uncle.
Yeah, and I definitely thank Nick and the whole the crew here. Where speaking of libraries, because of that, so he called up the same situation I think as many of you here. He called up the foundation, Nixon Foundation, and they connected him with my Uncle Ed, which was President Nixon's youngest brother, who's still alive. And Uncle Ed, who had some engagements he couldn't attend, and he gave me a ring. He's like, Devon, I'm sending you to go represent the family. And I'm like, okay, no worries. And Nick,
how old were you?
I was 23. Nicholas, I'm sure, had no idea at the time. And he gave me a call, and he's like, hey, I'm so happy. I heard you're able to come out. Would you be willing to speak? I was like, yeah, sure, no worries. I used to do a thing called Model United Nations, which is like speech and debate in high school. No big deal. I'm like, how long would you like me to speak for? He's like, 30 minutes. It's like, in my mind, it's like, oh. But of course, after a brief pause, like, no problem. And then kind of similar, I think it was Richard a moment ago, where you say that you looked up online shortly thereafter. I looked up online shortly thereafter, a few days later, Devon Nixon, keynote speaker, First Family's Library Museum. I'm like, all right. So going back to the Family Library Museum, I then proceeded to spend the next few weekends reading everything wall to wall at the library, which is actually really cool. If anyone gets a chance, it's a really cool Nixon Library. It's amazing. The house that our great-grandfather built is actually right there in the middle. It's where Uncle Dick was born. And it's really cool. It's a beautiful place, but it was a pleasure, and it was cool. I've always known the backstories from the family, but it was a real pleasure because of the Cherry Blossom Festival and Nicholas and everyone really digging into the further history and learning more details. And it was actually passed on, just finalizing the last point I made. It was a cool link that was sent to me just on Tucker Carlson a few months back. If you look up Tucker Carlson Watergate, he interviewed a gentleman. It's a couple hours long, but very interesting information. Just a lot of things that have come to light in public in recent days about the whole situation that went down. So it's worth a watch.
So happy First Ladies Day. This is First Ladies Day. So today is the day we've set aside. It's the last Saturday of the month of April. And we have a lot of the commission members on the stage, but we've made a lot of progress in getting that day established. We're not asking for a federal holiday, but we want a proclamation or an executive order stating that that day will be First Ladies Day. So we've been making progress, and the White House is in touch, and we hope to make that a reality. Secondly, the Society of Presidential Descendants. We still exist. We have a lot of the members up here on the stage that are on the Board of Trustees, and we continue to recruit new members, but we also have several initiatives that we want to accomplish. The Book Award is coming up in October. It'll be in New York at the University Club. We picked the best book based upon the best book on presidential leadership, and the first prize is $10,000, $2,500 for the second, $2,500 for the third. So it's not a sleazy prize. I mean, the Pulitzer Prize doesn't even get zero. So, but it's a good, we have a lot of great things. We have Civics Day, which we celebrate to learn more about civics, and we go into the schools and talk to the students there. And lastly, we focus on presidential research and studies, and we hope to, down the road, be able to fund scholarships for that.
Well, it's very exciting. Yeah. Shannon?
One of the things I forgot to mention earlier is that last year I helped produce a documentary about James Hemings, and it's called James Hemings, Ghost in America's Kitchen. You can see it on Amazon Prime Video. Basically, it tells the story about how James Hemings went over to France with Jefferson, and he learned how to cook with the best chefs and artisans over there. He's the reason that we now have macaroni and cheese in the U.S. We have French fries, which I know we all love French fries, vanilla ice cream, and so many other things that he brought back and incorporated into what it was here now in America that we know of all these great things. So you can check out his story, and it's James Hemings, Ghost in America's Kitchen.
That's great.
So I want to put a plug into here for Eisenhower. There is in process, they're making a new documentary. They were just starting it out. I think it's really going to be exciting. And it's going to be about Eisenhower and what he did and how he did it and what he thought about freeing the camps, the Holocaust camps, of course, and how he handled that and the kinds of issues he had to face to be able to get our troops there as soon as we could. I think it's really going to be exciting.
Well, this is... I'd like to listen to these folks for a long time, but the father of Cherry Blossom Festival is saying we're running out of time. So while he's walking this way, Richard has something else to say.
I just have one little quick follow-on to that, because Shannon mentioned the French cook and all. And so in the mid-1780s, James Monroe and Thomas Jefferson lived together in Annapolis. And Jefferson brought his French cook with him. And James Monroe learned to speak French from that French cook. He went on twice to be the ambassador to France, where he'd learned the language from Jefferson's chef. So you never know that.
And James Hemings is Sally Hemings' brother. So he was originally from the U.S., went over to French, learned all that stuff they did there, and brought it back. But it's also believed that both Sally Hemings and James were bilingual in French because they had to accompany him to all these luxurious things and had to speak the language while they were there.
Well, shall we thank the descendants for their time with us? It's always wonderful.
Again, I want to take a moment to have those who were here on our first panel, if you will stand. Yeah, the first panel. We appreciate you being here again this year. And I want to take a moment to recognize, you can be seated, Jill Campbell and Donnie Kendrick. Is Donnie Kendrick in the room? Yes. From President Polk's family and Mary Todd Lincoln's family. And they get the award for perfect attendance for all 20 years. Yeah. On this National First Ladies Day, as you know, Marshfield is the birthplace of National First Ladies Day. We have something exciting to share with all of you. One of the projects of First Ladies Day is the National Trail that will identify locations all over the nation where our First Ladies have visited, where they've been lived, where they've been educated, and there'll be this code, this QR code here. When you see a sign like this, you'll be able to look at it, and it'll take you to the National First Ladies Day website where all the locations will be listed, and you'll be able to read about those. And so if you live in an area where a First Lady has visited or has a connection, soon you'll be able to purchase. This is the first showing of this sign. This is actually the logo for the National First Ladies Day Commission, which is Martha Washington's silhouette. You all saw it at brunch this morning. But it's really exciting, and Andrew Oak has been working on this and had the sign designed, and I hope this is going to be a great educational tool. We will have several of these in Marshfield from where we've had First Lady visits, and it's going to be a wonderful resource all over the country. So be watching these, and as you see these across the nation, remember where you saw them first. I also want to mention this. The first gathering of the descendants on this stage was about an announcement ceremony that I had hoped would come to pass for a National First Families Library and Museum. A library and museum that would be located here in Marshfield, where you would be able to gather year-round to learn about all of our presidents and their family members. And that first gathering was the announcement ceremony. Then I think it was a few years later where we had a big gathering where we actually dedicated the exhibits. And then for 3 years, that location was on our square where the Sports Shack is now located. And in subsequent years, we've had a display at the Webster County Museum. But it was very important to me as we celebrated this 20th anniversary year that we come full circle about that original gathering. And so what do I mean by that? Well, we still do not have a brick and mortar location, but I had hoped that we could build something virtually until a brick and mortar location could be developed. So Kale Shuck is here today from Realm Tech Studio, and Kale's in the back. Everybody look and wave at Kale. Yeah. Kale worked with me on the layout of what I wanted that building to look like, what my dream was. And we have designed a virtual museum. And right now, Larry Cook's collection, is the featured collection within the walls of the museum. And so today is the unveiling of this virtual museum. You'll be able to go through it, you'll be able to view the items, you'll be able to not only read about the items, but then the AI voice will describe the items to you. Eventually, it will have a gift shop where you'll be able to purchase items from many of our speakers from Cherry Blossom Time. You'll be able to interact with much of the merchandise that some on this stage and some of our historians have produced. And then there's an auditorium space at the very end of this hallway where right now, virtually, you'll go into the auditorium and you'll be able to watch videos from previous Cherry Blossom festivals that have to do with the presidency. It's fascinating, it's beautiful, it's cutting-edge technology, but until that happens here virtually, we're doing a parade today. Location, this virtual museum will allow that dream to become a reality. And Kale has worked so hard putting that together. Dr. Cook went through his collection extensively and has brought out featured items that I think you will really enjoy. There are some items from my collection, which was the original items for the collection, and I think that it'll be a great learning tool for the public and for students alike. And I'm very excited about that. And I was at a conference in Baltimore, Maryland for museums and was looking at all the latest technology in the museum world. And professionally, I'm the executive director of the Laura Ingalls Wilder Home and Museum, and so we're always trying to stay on the cutting edge of technology. And I called Kale from the sales room floor, and I said, do you think that you could build a virtual museum for the National First Families Library and Museum? He said, well, I could sure try. And he's worked really hard. So see, look at this. You can go up. You'll be able to read about the item. And then there's a location underfoot where you'll have to kind of linger. Yeah. So I'm excited to share that with you today, and I'm excited to have you all on stage full circle from 20 years ago, again in chronological order, which I was so proud of that first year. And we thought about this just a while ago. We didn't have a pink ribbon to cut, but Karen found some yellow yarn. Only in Marshfield, right? We'd like to have a picture of you ceremoniously. Larry, will you stand on this side? This is our ribbon cutting. Yeah, come over here. I'm proud of this, and this is going to take the festival to a different level year-round. And I hope that you'll take the time to look at it, and I'm excited to share that with all of you as well. I'm pleased to announce the opening of the virtual space of the National First Families Library Museum, with all this history represented on our stage in the heartbeat of the nation. Now, as is tradition, if you'd like to come forward and take pictures in just a second, before we close today, the final act of each Cherry Blossom Festival for many years is to listen to the recording of Dame Olivia de Havilland reading Beneath the Cherry Blossom Trees, which was written for our festival. And so we'll listen to that, and then I'll invite you to come forward to take the traditional group pictures of the descendants. Be seated.